People think the scariest things happen in abandoned places, empty roads, dark forests, broken buildings. But sometimes, the most disturbing nights happen in perfectly normal homes, on perfectly normal streets, where nothing is supposed to go wrong. The kind of house where the porch light is warm, the neighbors are friendly, and everyone says, "You'll be totally safe." What makes a memory truly terrifying isn't always what you see. It's what your mind keeps replaying years later, long after you've grown up. I'm 29 now, and I've been through several frightening situations in my life, but nothing has stayed burned into my memory like one specific night when I was just 15 years old, the night of my first real babysitting job. It wasn't the casual kind where you watch a cousin for an hour while someone runs errands. This was different, a paid job for close family friends, the type your parents automatically trust because everyone knows each other. Their names were Mark and Diane, and they had a 5-year-old son named Charlie. They lived in a clean, well-kept house in a quiet neighborhood where everything looked calm and ordinary. That's actually what makes it harder to explain. Nothing about the place felt dangerous. It looked like the kind of home where bad things simply don't happen. It was an early fall Friday evening when my parents dropped me off around 6:30. Mark and Diane were already dressed up and clearly in a hurry to get to their night out, and at the time, I had no idea that the next few hours would stay with me for the rest of my life. Mark greeted me with a firm, overly professional handshake, the kind you'd expect at a job interview, and Diane kept calling me their lifesaver, like I was doing them a huge favor just by being there. Before leaving, they carefully walked me through the routine. When Charlie eats, what he eats, what time he goes to bed, and one specific instruction, repeated twice: keep his bedroom door slightly open at night. If he needed the bathroom, I was supposed to walk him there because he sometimes got nervous in the upstairs hallway after dark. Mark then took a moment to explain the door locks in more detail than I expected. They rarely use the front door, he said, since they normally came in through the garage, but if I stepped out onto the back deck, I needed to secure the back door properly. Both locks, not just one. He pointed them out carefully, the top deadbolt and the regular lock underneath. I nodded like it was obvious. A lock is a lock, I thought. I didn't realize then how important that small detail would become. They left a little after 7, their car pulling away quietly down the calm suburban street. The moment the house settled into silence, Charlie immediately asked if we could play board games, then quickly upgraded the request to hide and seek. I gently steered him away from that idea because the house was bigger than it first looked, with too many corners and spots where a 5-year-old could wedge himself and panic. We compromised with a card-matching game at the coffee table, then switched to a kid-friendly video game in the family room, where the characters just run around collecting items and nothing truly bad happens. The safe, colorful kind of game that keeps kids distracted. Around 7:45, I heated up the dinner Diane had prepared. Mac and cheese and chicken nuggets, the universal babysitting menu. Charlie ate happily in front of the TV, which I suspected was normally against the rules, but I wasn't trying to become the strict babysitter on my first real job. After dinner, we went through the bedtime routine, brushing teeth, washing hands, picking out pajamas, and headed upstairs. The second floor had a wide hallway that seemed longer at night than it had earlier, stretching past a couple of closed bedroom doors and a bathroom with the light off. Charlie's room sat at the very end. Inside, everything looked normal and tidy, soft lighting, toys arranged along the wall, and a small closet with sliding doors. Earlier I'd seen inside when he grabbed a toy, just little clothes, and a few storage bins stacked on the top shelf. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. Just an ordinary kid's room at the end of a quiet hallway, the kind of place where you'd never expect anything to feel wrong. Charlie's room was simple and neat. In the corner beside his dresser sat a tall laundry hamper with a lid, the kind that could easily hide a week's worth of clothes. A small yellow nightlight glowed softly from the top of the dresser, casting long, gentle shadows across the walls. I tucked him into bed, read him a short story, and waited until his breathing slowed. Just as I was about to leave, he asked if I could stay in the hallway for a minute. His voice was quiet, not whining, not dramatic, just uneasy. I stood outside his half-open door and listened to him, shifting under the blanket for about half a minute before everything went still. Assuming he drifted off, I left the door slightly open like his parents instructed and went to the guest bedroom down the hall near the stairs. the spot Diane said I could relax in once he was asleep. It felt more like a display room than a real bedroom, with a neatly made bed and a small TV that looked rarely used. I turned something random on, kicked off my shoes, and lay back, thinking the hard part of the night was already over. For about 40 minutes, everything stayed calm, the kind of quiet that makes you stop paying attention to it. Then I heard soft footsteps in the hallway, not loud, not running, careful steps. I looked up and saw Charlie standing in the doorway, clutching a stuffed animal and rubbing his eyes. But he didn't look sleepy anymore. He looked genuinely frightened. He didn't even step fully into the room at first. He just whispered my name like he didn't want whatever was outside to hear it. I waved him closer, and he moved slowly, glancing back into the hallway like he was afraid to turn his back on it. He told me he heard something coming from his closet. I gave him the standard reassurance. Old houses make noises, wood shifts, vents tick, pipes scratch. But he shook his head quickly and said it wasn't that. He said it sounded like scratching. The way he said it low and certain sent a small chill through me, even though I told myself it was just a kid's imagination working overtime in the dark. Trying to keep things light, I told him there were no monsters in his closet and asked if he wanted me to check. He nodded immediately. I walked him back to his room, turned on the main light, and faced the closet doors. They were fully closed. I slid one open and gave it a quick look inside. Just hanging clothes, small shoes, and storage bins on the upper shelf. I didn't examine it carefully because I was completely sure no one could possibly be in there, and at first glance, nothing seemed out of place. To make it convincing, I even pushed a few hangers aside and shuffled the clothes like I was doing a real search. Of course, nothing was there. I slid the closet door shut again, and the tension drained from Charlie's face almost instantly. I tucked him back into bed, reminded him that everything was okay, and returned to the guest room. For about 15 minutes, the house went quiet again, that deep nighttime quiet where every tiny sound feels louder than it should. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway a second time. This time they were faster. Charlie appeared in the doorway much more shaken, gripping his stuffed animal tight. He looked close to tears. In a low, urgent voice, he said, "Chris." The closet door moved. I sat up, forcing myself to stay calm and not show the flash of irritation. I felt I assumed he was working himself up. I kept my voice steady and told him we'd go check again. We walked back down the hallway together, and the moment we reached his doorway, I stopped mid-step. The closet was open, not cracked open. One sliding panel was pushed all the way to the side. I felt a strange drop in my stomach, not full fear yet, but that uncomfortable jolt when reality doesn't match your memory. I was sure I had closed it. I asked Charlie why he opened it, in that firm tone adults use when they think a kid is messing around. But the way he denied it, immediate, insistent, almost offended, didn't sound like a lie. I stepped forward and pulled the door shut again, and this time I paid attention to the track. It stuck slightly and took effort to move. It didn't feel loose enough to drift open by itself. I gave him a look that suggested I thought he was trying to spook me anyway, tucked him back in, and told him it was time to sleep for real. Walking back toward the guest room, I caught myself listening over my shoulder, hyper-aware of the hallway behind me, half expecting to hear another set of steps that didn't belong to either of us. I quietly scolded myself for being paranoid. I was just a 15-year-old in a trusted family friend's house, on a calm, well-lit street. Nothing about this place should feel threatening. About 10 minutes later, instead of footsteps, I heard Charlie call out again. Not a scream, more like a shaky, controlled cry, like he was trying to be brave, but couldn't hold it together. As I stepped into the hallway and moved closer to his room, I could hear him softly crying. I stepped into Charlie's room and saw him sitting upright in bed, tears streaking down his cheeks, breathing in short, shaky bursts. My first instinct was to check the closet again. The door was shut. That should have made me feel better, but instead, it made the room feel tighter, heavier, like something unseen had simply chosen a different place to hide. I softened my voice and asked what happened, but he didn't answer. He just slowly lifted his arm and pointed toward the far corner of the room. My eyes followed his finger, and for a split second, my brain refused to understand what I was looking at. Behind the tall laundry hamper, squeezed into the narrow gap between it and the wall, Someone was crouched down. A grown man, folded in on himself, trying to appear smaller than physically possible. First I registered a shoulder, then dirty shoes, then part of a face and eyes wide, unblinking eyes locked directly on mine. The moment couldn't have been more than 2 seconds, but it felt stretched and distorted, like time stalled just long enough for pure instinct to take control. I didn't scream. I didn't speak. My body chose action before thought. I lunged forward, scooped Charlie out of the bed with both arms, and backed toward the door without looking away from that corner. The man didn't rush us. He didn't even stand. He stayed frozen in that crouched position, like if he stayed still enough, we might pretend he wasn't there at all. The second I cleared the doorway, I turned and ran down the hall to the guest bedroom, shut the door, and locked it. Charlie started to panic, and I pressed him close, whispering for him to stay quiet, not explaining, just urging silence. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone while dialing emergency services. When the operator answered, the words came out rushed and broken. There was someone inside the house. I was babysitting. There was a man hiding in the child's bedroom. She asked if he had a weapon. I didn't know. She asked if we were secure. I said we were locked in an upstairs room. She told me not to hang up. I kept staring at the doorknob, expecting it to twitch, to rattle, to explode inward. Every tiny house noise sounded like a footstep outside the door. The operator kept me talking, asking for a description, but all I could give her was this. I saw his eyes, watching from behind the hamper. That's it, just his eyes. When I finally heard distant sirens growing louder outside, it was the first time in my life that the sound of police cars felt like rescue instead of fear. The operator told me not to open the door for anyone until an officer came upstairs and identified himself clearly. Those minutes felt endless. Every creak in the house sounded like movement. Every shadow under the door looked alive. When the knock finally came, it was firm and controlled, followed by a calm voice calling my name. Dispatch must have given it to them. I unlocked the door with shaking hands. 2 officers stood there with flashlights already raised, scanning past me into the room before even stepping inside. They checked Charlie, then quickly moved through the upper floor. Within minutes, they told me they'd already cleared the downstairs. No one was there. The front door, however, was standing wide open. No forced entry, just open. They searched every closet, cabinet, and crawl space, but whoever had been hiding in that bedroom corner was gone. Based on the timing, they believed he heard me run, slipped out immediately, went down the stairs, and exited through the front before the sirens got close. When Mark and Diane arrived home and saw police cars outside, the entire mood of the night shattered. Confusion, fear, guilt, relief, it all hit at once. Mark asked questions I struggled to answer, the same ones the officers had already asked. Then the topic turned to the doors. He walked straight to the back entrance and checked the locks. I followed, already feeling a knot form in my stomach. The top deadbolt was open. Only the lower lock was set. He looked at me and asked quietly if I'd locked both like he showed me. I admitted I'd only locked the bottom one. He explained without raising his voice that the lower lock could be popped open if someone jiggled the handle hard enough, which is exactly why he emphasized the deadbolt. I could see the frustration in his face, but it faded quickly, replaced by something else: gratitude that Charlie was safe and that I reacted fast. What haunted me afterward wasn't just that someone had been inside the house. It was how close the timing was. If Charlie hadn't gotten scared and come to get me, if he'd tried to ignore the noise and stay brave in his bed, if I had brushed him off and told him to stop imagining things, if I'd been downstairs glued to my phone instead of listening, the outcome could have been very different. That night permanently changed how I respond when a child says something feels wrong. Kids don't always have the words to explain danger, but they often feel it before adults do.